What if the way you've been telling your life story reveals the secret to what is holding you back? Stories play an integral part in how we see not only ourselves, but the whole world. Stories are more than just an important part of communication. They also reveal hidden aspects of our inner talk, which can either support us or end up holding us back from the very things we want most in life, without us even realizing it. Join author, mindset coach, and award-winning singer-songwriter Carrie Rowan on her show, Look for the Good, every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. when she shares nuggets of wisdom from her internationally best-selling book, Tell a New Story, 5 Simple Steps to Release Your Negative Stories and Bring Joy to Your Life. Carrie's powerful stories and compelling guests will empower you to change how you look at your own life while giving you some powerful tools and tips you can use every day to help you feel better and move yourself closer to the life you've been longing to live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Look for the Good. I'm your host, Carrie Rowan, mindset strategist and coach, and I love sharing nuggets of wisdom about the stories we tell each other, and more importantly, those little stories we tell ourselves up here. And join me and my special guest as we share our personal stories of strength and triumph every week here on Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. You can listen online on your mobile device, in your car, or ask Alexa to play Dream Vision 7 Radio. And tune in every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern Time to get real stories and tips on how to turn your story and your life around. And evolve with us as we unite humankind with universal love. I'm super excited to be here with you, everybody. And welcome back to another edition of Look for the Good. And as you know, I love talking about our stories with our special guests. And hello, Lisa, waiting in the wings. How are you? And before I introduce Lisa to you guys, we all know those stories. You know those ones, the stories that we feel like are sort of haunting in our own brains, right? The ones that keep coming up. And a lot of times, unfortunately, those stories can be negative. They can tell us things that we can't do or we shouldn't be doing, or remember the time you did this. And those are the kind of stories that really hold us back. They hold us back from doing the things in life that we really want to do. And these stories are really important, especially on our call today with Lisa, because Lisa is somebody who works with people all the time who have this particular fear that comes up because they are trying to launch a book. And let me tell you, she helped me get through some of that stuff too. And when I was ready to launch my book, boy, does that really just bring out all those little tiny monster stories in our head. And we're going to talk all about that. We're going to talk about all sorts of great stuff that Lisa has to offer here with us today. Let me tell you a little about Lisa. Lisa Tenner is an award-winning book writing coach who assists writers in all aspects of the writing process. From writing a book proposal and getting published to finding one's creative voice. Her clients have appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show, CBS Early Show, The Montel Williams Show, CNN, Fox News, New Morning, and much, much more. They blog on sites like The Huffington Post, Psychology Today, and WebMD. But what she didn't say in there is Lisa is an absolutely incredible author herself. And we're going to talk about her books and her amazing classes. And Lisa, welcome so much to Look for the Good.
Thank you so much, Carrie. It's great to be here with you.
It's so good to have you. We were just talking before we came on that Lisa was my second show ever. She was my second special guest way back when I first started this. I wasn't even doing video at the time. So I'm like, Lisa, you got to come on. You have so much great stuff to talk about. And we want to see you and hear from you. And you are getting ready to launch another book, which is so incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is. It's exciting.
So exciting. And, we were talking a little bit about the arts, and I love what you do for people because you really help people overcome those stories, right? And you help people dive into the writing. And the writing and understanding creativity is such a huge part of what you do. Tell us a little bit about what is your personal process, and then how do you share that with others to get them to actually write the book in their head that they know they want to write?
It's such a great question. And process can change over time and even change week to week a little bit. But I would say a lot of my process is that I do when I wake up, I often journal my dreams. I write down what I dreamt and I kind of play around with them. I might dialogue with the dream character and I might just write a poem or something, or I might go right into working on a chapter if I'm working on a book at that time. Uh, but so that's one piece of my writing process, and I think
Mhm.
it's a powerful one because it does take advantage of that liminal state we're in when we first wake up, and we have such access to our creativity then. And it really is kind of an expanded perspective we come from.
Mhm.
But the other piece is that I draw upon ancient practices from Qigong and yoga and even Sufi spinning and other kinds of practices, both movement practices and breath that are simple to do, but incredibly powerful for letting go of some of that stuff just really easily. Letting go of those voices, right, that tell us we can't do it, or that confusion, or feeling stuck, and then just get us into that creative state with a lot of ease. And it takes us to, I think, a higher state of consciousness where we're really drawing upon our very best, and so our writing is the best that we, that we do, or it's really, um, it flows better metaphors, or just more beautiful,
Mm.
and more precise, those kinds of things. So it's really powerful to draw upon that. And I often do that for myself, and also in my writing classes, my writing groups with other writers who usually are working on books. Sometimes they're working on other kinds of writing. And people report over and over how these mindful movement and breathing exercises really make a difference.
I love that. That is so up my alley. Um, so tell us a little bit more. So like I know what Qigong is because you and I spoke. I did a
Hmm.
Qigong weekend one time at Kripalu, which was so amazing. I mean, I learned so much. Um, and I love using some of those techniques, like the shaking. I always think about the shaking, like, and we do that stuff naturally,
Hmm.
which we would always start with the shaking, which is really such a great way to just reset your nervous system. And in this day and
Hmm.
age, people need more tools to do that. They know in their mind somehow that they need to do it, but they just don't do it. And I love how you take that and bring it into creativity. So talk a little bit about that, how those two marry so well together. You already mentioned
Yeah.
a few things.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought of as you're speaking is just about that pause, right? Rather than going from one thing to another, really making this sacred time when you're writing. And Qigong bouncing really helps because as you shake, you do relax, and you're also releasing. You're releasing stress, you're releasing fears, you're releasing anything that's sort of stuck in the body, the
Mm.
physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual body. And so as you shake and shake it off, you come to a place that's much more powerful, much more conducive to flow. And then Qigong specifically is an ancient art. It has martial arts roots, but also it has roots in meditation and movement. And the story goes that it was actually an enlightened being from India, I think India or Tibet, who practiced yoga and brought those practices to the monks in China because they were sitting still for so long, and they needed movement to actually improve their health. So that's the
Mm.
story of how Qigong began. These Taoist masters who were meditating in caves but not moving. So movement is really helpful, powerful for our well-being, but also for creative flow. And there are studies that show exercise and other kinds of movement can really help with our creativity.
I love that. And I remember it being described to me as a moving meditation,
Hmm.
right? It's like kind of, you sort of see people in the park with the movement and doing all that and scooping up the energy. And I love that piece of it. So it's mindful moving, right? It's moving with a purpose. And the way that you have created this connection between the two and between our writing is really cutting edge, I feel like.
Thank you. Yeah, I think too, for a lot of people, meditation is hard. A lot of people in the West, and it's hard for me. one of my friends is an astrologer, and she told me, "You're an Aries. Of course you can't sit still." So that's my excuse.
That's
But
awesome.
I think it's true that a lot of
Uh-huh.
us find it hard to sit still.
Yeah.
And meditation and movement and emotion, like Qigong or yoga, can be a way to tap into the benefits of meditation and that mindfulness without having to completely sit still and try to like shut off all our thinking. It gives us a focus. It helps
Mm,
us really get back into the body. So much of the time we're up in our heads. That's another cultural thing, I think.
yeah.
And we don't have to spend all our time there. When we really start to embody the body, that helps us become a better writer. And for a lot of reasons, one just being that flow that is so much easier to access. But another is that so much of writing is calling upon our sensory experiences and remembering them. And if we're just in our head, it's harder to remember that. But if you're really in your body, you're going to remember those smells and tastes and the feel of things and what you heard in much more rich dimension and much more powerfully.
Yeah, I love that. And being able to describe that to somebody else, it's like
Hmm.
it's the essence of, I just think about songs being just a 3-minute little story.
Hmm.
And that's what really songwriters are striving for, is to bring that element that you just described into that 3-minute experience and have somebody feel. And of course, any book, that's the goal, right? Is to have that reader smell, taste, feel, sense, just that thing that we're talking about,
Hmm.
and relate it to something in their own life so they can really call upon their own experiences. That is powerful. It's powerful. So, okay, talk a little bit about your new book, Breathe, Write, Breathe, because I know a lot about this book, dun, 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 The Joy of Writing Journal, which is unbelievable and fabulous. And I love it. And actually gave it to my daughter to do some of the stuff too for some of her writing. So, how is this book different? Um, you talked a little bit about Qigong. How do you get people to incorporate that and teach them and make it into a practice for them too, so that they can really boost their writing and just the way that they feel, even if they're not writing anything?
Hmm. Well, one of the things I did was I chose easy practices, simple ones that are really powerful, but a lot easier to learn. So I had a couple, actually, I don't think it was Qigong, but I had a couple yoga practices that were more complicated, and I ended up taking them out because I really wanted this book to be super accessible and easy and fun. Uh, and another thing I did, as you know, is like I did in the Joy of Writing Journal, I have QR codes, and as you do in Tell a New Story,
Hmm.
is I use QR codes to access videos and audio meditations so that every chapter has a video or audio, and the reader can just easily scan with their phone and watch the video and practice and learn with the video. So the instructions are there in the book. You don't have to use your phone. But for a lot of readers, I think it's going to make it really easy because you see me doing it and you're doing it with me. And there's a way that that's fun too, to be doing it with someone, even if they're on video. So that makes it, I think, easily accessible
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
And then I do have at the back of the book some ways that you can start to keep track of, which practices really resonated for you. So you can go back
Hmm.
and do them again when you're done with the book, and you can keep using them in your creative practice. And that is very powerful too. One thing I've noticed with Qigong is the more you practice, the more you really tap into the energy when you're doing a practice. And when you're tapped into that energy, wow, right? It's just
Yeah.
it's like you're plugging that plug into the wall socket, only it's more like the sun, and
Yes.
and everything becomes more intense in this beautiful
Mm.
way. And your writing just can't help but be more powerful and have more
Yeah.
impact on your readers, but also
Yeah.
on you. It's,
Yeah.
I think, a more enjoyable process. And I find myself in a really heightened state of being when I write. And I know that the exercises are part of that. And I hear that from my course participants in Bring Your Book to Life and Get Your Writing Done, that these practices, when they're in class, they say, "This is my best writing. I always do my best writing here." because we're
Mm.
using those practices and it's really powerful. And some of them use those practices outside class as well. And I know they've
Hmm.
said that it's made a big difference for them. So,
Yeah.
and a lot of that is because not because Lisa invented these amazing practices, right? It's because these are time tested. They come from the ancients and they passed it down century after century for
Mm.
us because they knew the value of it, right? So it's really such a privilege and an honor to tap into that. And I feel with me, those masters, like they're all excited that there's a book that doesn't just teach the practices, but actually gives people a way to use them for an activity, right? And to
Yes.
use them for creativity, especially. So I'm kind of finding out more and more how maybe guided I've been and also
Mm.
how supported I am, um,
Yeah.
on many levels. And it's humbling and uh, it's just like such a beautiful thing. I feel so excited and so grateful. And I hope that as you and everyone listening does these practices that you'll experience that too, like, wow, I can't believe I get to do that. And
Yeah.
as you work with some of these practices, maybe even daily or a few times a week, that you'll see how much they grow for you and how
Mm.
much spaciousness there is in each of them to teach you and to help you grow and heal and experience life in new ways.
I love that. So many good things in there, Lisa. I love that. Creativity by it just its pure nature is like you mentioned, the channeling of the energy. You're bringing that life force that creates worlds, call it what you want, right? You're
Hmm.
channeling that. You're doing that already when you're being creativity. That's why it makes you feel so good and so
Hmm.
alive. And it's so soul nurturing, like we talked about before,
Yeah, and
right?
one way to think of it too is it's just coming to me is in Qigong we think of the central meridian as like this channel that goes from the heavenly realm to the earthly realm. It goes from that place of inspiration through us and into the earth where it's grounded, into the very center of the earth where it's grounded. And in some Qigong practices, we actually envision that central meridian growing, like if you picture it as a column, right?
Hmm.
It has a bigger and bigger diameter. And so that's kind of what happens, I think, with a lot of these practices is over time, your channel or your central meridian is getting wider and wider. So the creative possibilities and what you tap into becomes bigger and bigger. And it's surprising and fun and joyous.
Absolutely. And it's that unknown of the beauty of not knowing what comes next, right? It's like the
Hmm.
muse. And and I love that you're giving actual practices, concrete things that somebody can say, hey, if I do this, then I'm going to expand my creativity.
Hmm.
And like I said before, it's the one thing that makes us feel alive. That's where we get the juice. It's not
Hmm.
sitting on the couch watching TV. It's doing something like this. This is the juice of life, right? It's like if you've
Yes.
ever created anything from a blank page, it's that feeling. You keep going back to it. You dabble a little bit here, you add a little bit of this and make a little bit of that. And it becomes this beautiful creation with its own life force. And
Mm.
that is the gift that you are giving people, is allowing them to tap into that, but also grow and expand what they already create to a
Yes.
place that, right, you can't even really imagine what can come out of that. It is
Hmm.
quite beautiful what you've created here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on it. So one of the things you said to me was it took you about 8 years to write this book. So tell us that process and what was going on with that.
I know it's kind of embarrassing in a way, right? Because I often help people write their books more quickly. But I got this idea in Qigong class where I was finding that as we practiced, I would get all these amazing ideas and I had to write them down. And so I started to like search around. We were practicing in a church in the meeting room. And so I would like always be looking for a scrap piece of paper or pencil. It wasn't always that easy to find. And my fellow Qigong practitioners would laugh along with me at my antics. But I just felt like, oh, I have to capture this. And a lot of it was about how Qigong inspires writing and inspires creativity. So, or my teacher would say something really amazing and I'd write that down. So it quickly became apparent, oh, this is a book. And I worked on it over the course of several years. And then, when COVID hit, I kind of, there were times where I took a break from it and then came back to it. And when COVID hit, this other book came in, The Joy of Writing Journal. And I think that book came in for a number of reasons. One was it was so timely. People needed something. They needed practices that were easy and accessible, and they also needed to connect. And I think what this book did that was maybe different from your average book is, and just like your book does, is connecting people by having these videos and audios. It's this whole other dimension, and they could see how other people were reacting to the prompts in the Joy of Writing Journal, and they could like experience the emotions that those people when they answered a question with such joy. It was uplifting, right? And a mood booster. And then journaling has so many benefits for our well-being, and people needed tools like that. So it came in, I wrote it quickly. I did edit it a number of times, but it was a much quicker book, but it said like me first. And I think it was also in some ways practice for Breathe, Write, Breathe. Breathe, Write, Breathe is a deeper book. And I think it has some ancient qualities to it as well as modern qualities. So it needed, I think, a lot more nurturing and tending than the Joy of Writing Journal. And also, this was my first time self-publishing. I had traditionally published before that. And there's a lot to learn when you're self-publishing.
Yes.
I had a wonderful publisher to work with. And so she brought a lot to the table, but even so, there's a lot to know and a lot to be aware of and plan for. So it was really helpful to do one book. Oh, we have the same publisher, right?
Yes, we did.
Tomorrow Monosoft.
Tomorrow,
She's
yep.
wonderful.
She sure is.
And so, I think for a lot of reasons, that book came in first. I published it. It won 5 book awards, and I'm really proud of
Wow.
it. Won the Nautilus and Ben Franklin and Ippy.
Wow.
And
Congrats.
thank you. Thank you. And now I feel like this book, Breathe, Write, Breathe, is like really my big offering, right? And I think the 8 years that went into it, like really made it a better book. And then this is crazy, but I had 3 different editors, and they all brought something different to the table, which is just what I needed at that time. So, I mean, I'm sure they're all great at, I don't think, well, 2 of them I don't think tend to do the whole book writing or book editing process, but I think Jane does. But it was really like I needed something very specific, and they were so gifted in that arena. So when I was first working on the book, Tammy Keeves was my first editor, and she really just did some developmental editing that helped me in going a little deeper in some places, and especially just really helping me trust in my material. She was so excited and enthusiastic, and she's kind of my ideal reader. I mean, she kept telling me that, like, oh, I'm your reader. Like, I love this.
That's
This is
so
just
cool.
what I live for. So I needed that in the beginning to have that confidence. And then later, when I thought I was really close to publishing, um, I was talking to actually my awards consultant, Melissa Sones, and she said, I sometimes do editing. And she started telling me about what she did, and something in me just said, hire her. And so I was planning to go right to the third editor, but I thought there's something she's going to bring to the table that I need. And what it was is she is a ruthless deleter. She cut, my
That's
book was
good.
like 350 pages, and she cut so much that it was 200 pages.
Wow.
And it was so valuable, but it's really hard to do. I think it's hard as an editor to do that. And it's hard as a writer. Some of those parts I really loved, like those meandering stories. But she said, your writers want help with writing. And if the story meanders too much, they're not going to be that, or some of them, right? A lot of them are not going to be that patient. They
It's
want
true.
what they need right away. And so these more meandering stories, they just, weren't working right for this book, which really is a how-to or self-help
Yes.
book. That's
Yes.
so she had me cut a lot, and it took me, she edited it in August. It took me, I think it was 4 months before I looked at it a few times and I didn't do anything. And then 4 months later, I finally really dove in and really attended to the edits she suggested. I think because it took me 4 months to really come to terms with deleting a lot of
Yes.
my
Yeah.
babies, my
You were
journals.
grieving. You were having that little
I
grieving time.
was, it
Yes, it's
was.
totally natural. And listen,
Yeah.
everybody, I know you're hanging on Lisa's every word. We have to break real quick. We'll be right back after this message from a sponsor. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Look for the Good. I'm here with Lisa Tenner, and she has us just compelled with this story that she's telling us. Tell us a little bit about your third editor, because I think this is really great for people to hear that this is what happens in real life with writing books. We think it's going to be one thing, and then it ends up taking on a life of its own.
That's right. So Jane Bernstein is also an incredible editor, and all three editors, I felt really got the book. But she was great at first of all, helping me really get specific. It's something I tell my clients to do all the time. Be more specific here,
Hmm.
a little deeper. And then, there were just places where I wasn't specific enough. And she either told me to get more specific, or she had like that word that just made it more specific than the word I was using.
Hmm.
And that is a humbling thing too, when you're an editor and then, we can't edit our stuff as well as somebody else because we're so used to it, right? And
Yeah.
even the absolute best writers had incredible editors at their publishing houses. So Jane was just amazing. And she also would just, for her, it was like that level of detail, the perfect word, and just getting me to be a little more precise or paint that picture a little better. And it made a world of difference. So this,
Mm.
you know, it really is true that every book is not just a product of the author. There's a team behind it. And, the people who produced and helped me make those videos and audios,
Mm.
Dan and Portland also were incredible. So it like there's so many people involved that make an amazing book. And that's a big part of the process. And so if you enjoy collaboration, then that's a really fun part of the process because in the beginning, there's a lot of writing on your own.
Hmm.
And then that
Yeah.
collaboration really can bring things alive in new ways, and you feel like you're part of something bigger than you.
I love that. I love the idea of collaboration too, because it's the synergistic effect, right? Even if you have just two people collaborating on something, it's more than two. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's the third mind, if you will, and the
Mm-hmm.
synergistic thing that happens when other people get excited about your work. That is a magical moment when you've got other people like these three editors who are excited about your work and your book.
Yeah.
Um, so I think also one of the classes that we were talking about that you do, which is get your writing done, becomes a sort of a collaboration, right? Even if it's just the
Mm-hmm.
energy of the people in the room. I love that idea. And I think people would like hearing about this community that you've created with that class.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that's true. And part of it too is we start out with Qigong bouncing usually, and then we might do another practice or two to get in that zone. And they're pretty quick, really powerful. And then we say hello to our muse. And usually that's just hello, muse. You can write it on the page or in the chat,
Hmm.
and I say it out loud. But acknowledging that creative aspect of us. And it also kind of acknowledges again that this is sacred time, right? And then we set an intention. Often it's a one-word intention, but sometimes it's a few extra words. Today for me, it was a few extra words because I taught
Hmm.
earlier today.
Hmm.
And one person will read those aloud. And it's not a huge group, so we really get to hear all the voices. And when somebody reads that aloud, it's amazing how you hear other things that, oh, I want to bring that into my practice. Oh, I'm so glad that person said that. And it adds to the that virtual room, right? Like we're in an energetic space together.
Mm.
And those words, those intentions fill the space and create the container for what comes in each person's individual practice.
Mm.
And then we just take a few minutes at the end of each hour to share insights, challenges, questions. I might do some laser coaching, but also, especially at the second hour, we often have one or two people just read a couple paragraphs. And it's very powerful to read your writing in a supportive group, especially for a lot of people who feel some self-doubt. And when you get that feedback back of how the writing moved somebody, you know they're being authentic, because they're sharing very specific things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a beautiful thing to experience. And every writer needs to experience that, I think, that confirmation of,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this really meant a lot to me today, and here's why. So that's very powerful too. And we don't spend a lot of time with it. People read, one or two paragraphs usually, and sometimes we don't even, do that. We don't do it every time, but it's an important aspect. And the final aspect that we do at the end of the first hour and the end of the second hour is gratitude. And gratitude begets more of what you're grateful for. So it's really important. It's so easy to say, oh, I wanted to write a whole chapter and I wrote 2 pages, or, oh, I just don't like the voice. But when you look for what you're grateful for, it's like, I love this one line.
Mm.
That's a win. And when you focus on that, you have a relationship with your creative muse. And when you focus on what's going right and you say, "Oh, thank you, muse, this was great," then your muse is like, "Oh, okay, you want more of that." It's
Right.
part of the relationship. And so you're nurturing that relationship with your gratitude.
Mm.
And, gratitude just puts us at a higher elevation too. So I
Sure
love that
does.
part of it.
I love that too. And it's funny because people think, well, of course I'm grateful, but really it's got to be part of your practice, whatever that practice is.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you've built it into your practice with your community writing group because
Mm-hmm.
it's shouting to the universe, yes, I like this, instead of our brains, which are so trained to look for what's missing. Like you said, oh, I wanted 5 pages, or I wanted a paragraph, or I'm not far enough ahead. We're always beating ourselves up with that little story. But when we can stop and say, hey, wait, this is an awesome line, and we know that that can lead to something else. I love that. You're asking for more of what you want. You're like pointing at it. Yes, I like this. Bring me more of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the two ends of the same stick, right? Either you're pointing at what you don't have and you're talking and complaining about that, or you're pointing at, oh, I really loved this. And that's a really beautiful thing I just created. I love that. That sacred relationship. It's like, and I feel like that creative muse is that tender as a baby child. It's like a 3 or 4 year old. They're not really sure, right? And it's our job to kind of nurture them and coax them that it's safe for them to come out here. If we're beating them up all the
Mm-hmm.
time, it's not safe for them to come out here.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think that's exactly right on, spot on.
Yeah. So I think people really need to understand. And I love that, getting to know that muse, because everybody's has a little bit different flavor, and we know what works for us or what doesn't work for us. Or if you're a new writer or you an aspiring writer, you're figuring all that stuff out. And I really love that you're there to support people in a really safe community to share their work.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you have another class too. Talk to us a little bit about that. Um,
Yeah,
I think
so
they want
bring
to
your
know
book
about
to
that.
life,
Yeah.
and I teach it from time to time. So I'm not offering it immediately, but if people are interested, they can email me, lisa@lisatenner.com, and I
Get on
can
the wait list.
yeah,
Yeah.
get on the wait list now
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, and
It
I
fills
it
up.
might spur
Mm-hmm.
me to to do it sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm sometimes we'll do a retreat. We're doing a retreat this summer, 1 day retreat.
Ooh.
But so lots of l- different things will crop up. But get your writing done is something that happens every week, twice a week. Some people come once a week, some come twice, some come for the hour, some come for both hours. And so, you kind of do it the way you can.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a website with that has all kinds of resources. So all my self-study materials, the materials from Bring Your Book to Life actually as well, are all on that private website for people in Get Your Writing Done. So how to write a book proposal, how to write a book in 8 weeks,
Mm.
getting your book concept together, and lots more creativity resources and videos, audios, ebooks, all of it's there. So
Wow.
yeah, there's a lot to
That's
there's a lot
juicy.
to use.
That is juicy stuff. So, I love that. I want to be in that class. I just really love that because I want to I want to get back into songwriting. And whatever your writing is, it doesn't have to be a book or a song. You could want to start a blog, right? It could be any kind of writing, or maybe you just want to see, people have always told you your whole life that you kind of have that little je ne sais quoi, if you will, about your writing, but you've never really done anything. Is that a good fit for somebody?
It is, yeah, yeah, because there are people who've come to that class and worked on starting a blog or just writing an article. So it doesn't have to be a book. And actually, one of the people in class, she was so persistent, and she has been working on these articles, and she got a few rejections. And she just got her first article published in a journal, and
Oh.
it's like such a beautiful exploration of kind of what it means to be a doctor who's working 36, 48 hours around the clock, and it was just so beautifully written. And she read a few she read it to us at the end of today's class, and it was just, well, all of us were, our mouths were open, we were just in awe. So
Mm.
yeah, so you don't have to be writing a book to be in that group,
I
and you
love
could be writing
that.
songs.
You could be writing songs.
But we
You
might
could
make you, well, I won't say we make you because we never make people, but we might ask you to sing
to
one
sing
for
it.
us.
I love that. So don't go anywhere. We're going to talk about shared joy, and we're going to talk a little bit about what gets in our way when we get right back with Lisa Tenner. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Look for the Good. This is an incredible conversation with Lisa Tenner, book coach and just author extraordinaire. She is just so much more than just a book coach. She is like a muse mentor, I'm going to call you.
Oh, wow, I like that.
Yeah, she mentors the muse. So, we were talking about that shared joy experience that happens in your class and that community that you're creating for people. I think that's such an important part of writing because writing feels like such a solo thing when I'm here in my office and I can't come out for the next 2 hours because I've got to get
Hmm.
this done, right? So,
Hmm.
how does that affect people's writing?
Well, it's interesting because a couple people mentioned in the past 2 days how much faster they wrote than they ever expected. One person had to come late to class, and she was very apologetic, but also kind of frustrated with herself because she had a lot to finish. And remarkably, in half an hour, she did like this amazing body of work and emailed it to me. And I actually read it last night and sent her my feedback this morning. I'm not always so fast, but
Wow.
so there is like sometimes a certain amount of speed that you work up. I'm not going to say that happens all the time, but often enough that you notice it, and and also people say, this is my best writing. When I come here, it's just my best
Mhm.
writing, and I think there is something, as you said, to that third mind. It's that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and there's something we're all offering to the collective energy that brings us all to a new level, and it's just magical.
It's beautiful. I love that. And I feel like there's so many people out there. I saw a stat one time, I think we talked about this before, that like 85% of people think that they have a book to write
Hmm.
inside of them, but like less than 5% ever do it. What are those thoughts? We love talking about stories. Like, what is holding them back? I feel like it's that imposter syndrome. Like, who wants to? Nobody's going to want to read my book. I'm not that good. All those things that pop in our brain. So, some English teacher told us one time that our paper wasn't good or something, or we got a D. So our mind holds on to this, and
Hmm.
not to our detriment. And a lot of times, how do you help people get over that? What advice would you give somebody if they know they want to do something but they're just afraid?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great question. So, certainly the practices help because they get you in a different headspace. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's all you
Mm,
need. And also, sometimes people get a little stuck with, I don't know what to write. And so,
mhm,
in every Get Your Writing Done session, I
mhm.
always have some prompts, and they're playful. They really vary a lot. And there's one person, Kiki, who shows up every week, and she just does prompts. And
That's
it's
awesome.
really fun that somebody's always embracing those prompts. And other writers who've said, I have a Hay House author who comes to the class, and she said, for a while, she wasn't sure how to get into her chapters. She knew what she wanted to teach, but she said, I really don't have like a nice story to lead people in. And so the prompts were giving her stories that just happened to work really well with each chapter she was planning to work on. So
Wow.
there was like this lovely synergy. So sometimes it's like that trust and then the right things come.
Mm.
But I think having something in your back pocket, like, okay, if I do, if inspiration doesn't just come, what can I do? And it is really helpful to have an outline because, especially with a book,
Oh, yeah.
because then you can say, I don't really feel excited about chapter 2 right now,
Right.
but I'd really love to write about chapter 8 and I've got my outline here, so let me do that and I know where it goes. If you're just writing kind of all over the place and there's no outline, it's going to feel confusing and not necessarily even go together or work often.
Hmm.
But if you've got an outline, you can move around within that outline and slot things. And the outline may change or things may change where they are, but but it really helps in terms of efficiency and effectiveness and flow
Yeah.
if you've got that ahead of time. So that's one
Yeah.
tip.
I love that.
Uh, and Eric Meisel, who's an incredible creativity coach, and I took a workshop with him actually while I was working on Breathe.Write.Breathe before the pandemic. And and I just felt like I needed some time to just focus on the book. And I wrote many of the chapters in that workshop with him. Actually, it was also at Kripalu. And he
Really?
says, a lot of writer's block is really just anxiety. And,
Mm.
you're telling yourself something, right? All those messages you said earlier, Carrie, about no one will read it, I'm
Hmm.
not that good, I'm an imposter. And it's just like, oh, what am I telling myself? Okay, what do I want to tell myself instead? And just write down what you want to tell yourself instead.
I love
And
that.
just make that choice like, okay, I'm going to pretend this is true and or I'm going to act as if this is true,
Yeah.
and that kind of fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Yeah. I
And
love
it
that.
it often works. Or sometimes, and Eric does this too with people, is having you really get clear about how much are these thoughts that I'm having, how much are they sabotaging me? What's their effect on my writing, my creativity, my happiness, my effectiveness in life, my ability to live my purpose? And when you get in touch with that, it's like, can I really afford to keep repeating this to
Mm.
myself? No. You know,
Hmm.
but I find other playful things can work too. You can dialogue with those aspects of you and find out what's underneath that and give them a new job. The inner critic can be a great editor, not when you're in the midst of writing and
Right.
flow, but later when it's time to edit, that inner critic might be helpful if they can channel their energy and not be negative, but be constructive. So there are ways to work with those aspects of ourselves. And I
Mm.
think journaling can really help with that in my experience.
Oh, journaling absolutely is a great way to address that because
Yeah.
you're asking yourself the questions, right? It's like you're becoming, your metacognition is kicking in because now you're observing what you're doing. It's my
Mm.
first step for anybody to figure out what those stories are that we say is to
Hmm.
start catching them, start capturing them. What is it that I'm saying? I wonder what, and then getting curious. I wonder why I'm saying that, right? I
Yeah.
love that. I love what you said about giving that little we call them like little gremlins around here. That little gremlin that's sitting on your shoulder, give him a new job. Hey, you
Mhm.
know what, Mr. Gremlin or whatever you want to call him, I got this. I got this. Why don't you focus on this? I'll use you when I need time for editing.
Yeah.
Um, right? It's sort of calming that, it's your brain and there's a certain amount of I don't know, just normalizing of this because we all do it. And I don't think people realize that it's just common for all humans. It's what our brain does, right?
Yes, right, right. My 17-year-old is always talking about the neuroscience and like kind of what we're hardwired to think in terms of problems.
I love it.
So, yeah.
There you go. And we're all
Mhm.
hardwired. We're all wired that way. But it doesn't mean that we can't interrupt that and
Mhm.
rewire that, right? Which you already mentioned quite a few ways to do that. Using your body is such a huge way to do that. So
Mhm.
I love everything that you're doing here. I just love the work that you put out into the universe. It's really, really beautiful. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
So do tell us. Everybody's like, well, where can I get this book? When can I get it? Tell us a little bit about that, your timeline.
Yes, you can get it on Amazon. The published date was June 12th,
Ooh.
and love to have you read it and work with it and let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear what this book, Breathe, Write, Breathe, does in your life, in your creative life, and beyond that too.
That is beautiful. I love that. And she means that. She will write back to you if you write to her and share your experience with her. Lisa's really great like that. And it really just I love hearing those stories too from people who have, interacted with my book as well, because they feel like they know us, and I'm sure you feel
Hmm.
this way too. You never really get to know an author as much as you do as when somebody has videos and audios and through the QR codes that we both have in our books, which
Hmm.
you were so brilliant to tell me about. I was thinking I would use like Spotify or something. And you're like QR codes, and who knew? COVID would come and everybody would know what a QR code was.
That's right. That's right. Well, we
'Cause
owe that to Tamara Monosov because she taught that to me. And when I heard you were a singer-songwriter, I was just like, oh, I know what's going to really make your book come alive for your readers. It's so perfect and so special.
so special. And it's funny because musicians knew what they were years ago because we'd put them on posters. You would sweat, but nobody
Oh,
really used them,
right.
right? It never really
Hmm.
became that popular until after COVID and restaurants started putting their menus on there. But yeah, it's a beautiful way. And so, like I was saying, it's the reader really has way more of a relationship with you, I feel like, when you have those QR codes. They
Hmm.
see your videos, they're doing stuff with you. It's an active relationship, and it really does let them into our world and how we really think and feel. And then they
Hmm.
start adopting those. And it's really a fondness that I don't think you could have gotten from just a black and white page before.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I know with the Qigong exercises, especially when you're doing them with a teacher and they're embodying the energy of it, then a lot of what you're actually learning is not just what you're reading, but also what you're experiencing and watching them and experiencing their energy. And so I think that's like a kind of a hard to quantify aspect of it, but it makes a difference.
It really
And it
does.
makes it really extra powerful, I think.
It sure does. So, everybody go and get your copy of that and go to Lisa's website. Tell us what your website is if they want to find maybe some book signings you're doing or something.
Yeah, yeah. It's lisatenor.com, Lisat as in Tom, En as in Nancy, Er.com. And the book will eventually be available beyond Amazon, but we started with Amazon, and shortly it'll be available wherever books are sold.
Love it. It's a great place to start. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on today. This has been so enlightening, a beautiful conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to all your listeners.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And remember, it is never too late to live your best story. Be well.
Thanks for tuning in to Look for the Good with your host, Carrie Rowan, best-selling author and mindset coach. Join us every Monday at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. right here at Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. If you weren't able to catch an episode, no worries. Just visit our website to find all the archived episodes of Look for the Good on demand, so you don't miss a thing. And remember, it's never too late to live your best story. For additional resources or to find out about how you can work with Carrie directly, visit carrierowan.com for more details.